There's an opportunity to ask questions. If you have the app, I will keep an eye on the iPad. Feel free to ask any questions, and I'll try and weave them into our amazing panel conversation. You can download the app as well if you don't have it yet. We'll start with a quick intro. Maybe just a bit of context, bigger than the internet. We're also going to be quite practical. We have amazing people on the panel that are at the coal face of the AI discussions with clients every single day. So we're going to try and find a bit of the balance between hype and reality, practicalities, what's happening, what do clients want. But let's kick it off with a quick intro. Marie.
Thanks very much, Wesley. So Marie Toft is my name. I'm the CEO and founder of Emotionise AI. And what we do is we're a generative AI company. We help to build better relationships at scale. We have trained AI to be emotionally intelligent, and we offer solutions to improve employee engagement outcomes and customer support outcomes. So it's all about language. Obviously, Gen AI is these large language models. And what our AI will do is it will give you an emotional audit on your communication, and then it will suggest more emotionally intelligent replacement sentences for high-stakes moments and moments that matter.
Thank you.
So Umesh, Sachdev, founder and CEO of Uniphore. We are an enterprise AI company. One of the earlier examples of an AI native company starting to work with enterprises, starting with 2008 when I founded the company. We serve about 1,700 enterprise customers around the world, some of the biggest banks, biggest telecom companies, biggest retail chains around the world. Over 800,000 users in the enterprise use our AI today at Uniphore. Our vision is ultimately to transform every single customer and employee experience that an enterprise has using AI. And we are very privileged to work with some of the biggest CIOs and enterprises around the globe.
Nice. So, and I'm Wesley, founder of Media.Monks. Practical application for us when it comes to AI is really helping clients change the global marketing org through the lens of what generative AI makes possible. So we were just chatting about this. Massive explosion in interest and attention in this space in the last year and a half. Maybe just to get a bit of a vibe check. AI, overhyped, underhyped? What's the practical realities that you're seeing clients want and go after, and what do you expect to happen in the next year or two when it comes to that?
So if we go back to the topic of this panel, which is AI going to be bigger than the internet? We've been working and training with generative AI now for nearly 3 years. We were one of the first Irish startups to see the potential of generative AI. I would say absolutely it is going to be bigger than the internet. I think we can, certainly from my perspective, I feel like we can answer that definitively. The CEO of NVIDIA, just as recently as towards the end of last year, has said he sees this as the most significant platform transition in computing history. He said, now there is an element of, he would say that, wouldn't he? NVIDIA is doing very, very well out of generative AI. But I would say definitely it is going to be bigger than the internet, and we can kind of extrapolate all those reasons. So we're in a strange place at the moment, and you asked Wesley, overhyped or underhyped. There's a lot of hype around generative AI, and we are in those, it reminds me so much, because I'm old enough to remember the beginning of the internet in the mid-90s, late 90s, and we're in a very similar space, and it's really interesting. There's the same fear and the same excitement being generated. And obviously we all know what happened then. The dot-com bust happened, and you could argue, was it overhyped? It probably wasn't overhyped if you look at how it's transformed society in the last 25, 30 years. So if you think about it, it's, this generative AI revolution is being driven by the ground up the way the internet was. It's a little bit Wild West at the moment, where organizations and large enterprises are struggling to get on board the Gen AI bandwagon, and meanwhile their employees are all using ChatGPT on the sly. That's definitely happening. And there's lots of fear around data, there's lots of fear around security, around privacy, in exactly the same way there was with the internet. So it's very similar to the birth of the internet. We're at that inflection point. However, one of the key differences with this technology is the speed at which it is going. That is, it took several years. I mean, I remember seeing a newspaper headline, in an archive program recently and saying, internet, no one's using it, it's overhyped. And that was actually about 99, 2000. That's not going to happen with this technology. It's the speed at which it's developing is exponential.
Well, to make it conversational, I'll say I agree with everything that Marie just said. I think if you think about where we are in the state of the enterprise, most folks are overhyping what AI will do in the near term, in the next few months of 2024, but dramatically underestimating what AI will do in the medium to long term in the enterprise. So let me make this real. We work with some of the biggest companies. If you think about every part of the enterprise, whether it's developers, legal department, paralegal, HR folks, customer service folks, we're going to see a massive economic shift in all those areas. But let's quantify it. Let's pick customer support. Everyone talks about this being the lowest hanging fruit in terms of AI impact. Here's what it means. 15 million people in the world work in the area of customer support. These are men and women who put a headset like this, get on call center calls every day. Over $400 billion of annual spend that occurs in this industry. Now, here's how the next 3 years of this industry look like. Think with me in the pyramid of 3 tiers. The top of the pyramid, the first impact of AI is what I call elimination. There won't be a need for any of us to reach out to a contact center because of AI, because AI gets predictive. It knows what we need. Before we need to call somebody, it helps us. Example, you're checking out at a retail store. Your credit card didn't go through. AI predicts, gives you a text message that you now have a buy now, pay later offer. You're fine. Keep going. You don't have to call somebody. About 30% of contact center calls would get affected by the elimination bucket of this, all right? Then we come to the middle tier of the pyramid, which I call deflection, where you still need to speak to somebody, but it's not the best idea to wait in a queue while an available contact center agent addresses. So a very conversational, generative AI chatbot or voice bot takes over, addresses your issue, no problem, great customer experience. That's another 30, 40%.
Yeah.
But that still means that about 40% of contact center calls, even in the next 3 to 4 years, will still need a human being. And that's the bottom of the pyramid, and this is where AI can become a great co-pilot. And a co-pilot which helps the contact center agent instantly provide the answer to your question, and instead of you taking 10, 12, 14 minutes, the call is half the time. But if you sum this up, I repeat, 15 million workers, 400 billion of annual spend. If you do the math, in the next 3 years, we would see up to 70% efficiency. That's dollar shifting from labor or current technology towards AI. That's over $250 billion in one function called customer support. So underestimating the long-term impact of AI, there's going to be a major disruption in the way we know org designs in companies, budgets in companies, economic value in companies, and the type of jobs, quite candidly, in these companies.
So this is maybe something that I think about a lot. There's a lot of excitement and anxiety in this space. I think a lot of the anxiety tends to be almost sci-fi scenarios. You're in the midst of it. Realistically, the next few years, we're already going to see meaningful societal impact from an economic perspective, right?
Well, I'd say absolutely. There is anxiety about the sci-fi impact of what's called AGI and artificial general intelligence. But speaking with CEOs and CIOs, I realized there's yet another big anxiety, Wes and Marie. If you're a publicly traded company today in any part of the world, you're under tremendous pressure that by the next earnings cycle, you better announce your AI roadmap. Which partnerships are you announcing? And by the way, that's not going to be enough. You're going to have to show efficiency gains quarter on quarter because of AI. And if you do that, your stock is rewarded like NVIDIA's is. And if you don't, then you could be like a BPO company running contact centers like Teleperformance, and your stock takes a beating. And that in itself is causing anxiety, where the CIOs are saying, I have pressure from my board to report a strategy, and yet every morning when I open the newspaper, I see Meta launch their latest open source model, and just in 2 days, OpenAI came back with its GPT 4.0. So how do I make these quick decisions when the technology is shifting so fast? So the balance between companies cannot not afford to make decisions and move forward, and yet at the same time, it's really hard to make long-term decisions. That's also another cause of anxiety, as we see in the enterprise.
Yeah, I would completely agree with Umesh. You know, obviously last year particularly, there was a lot of kind of anxiety and exactly as you said, and there are deep philosophical debates, by the way, that need to be had about artificial intelligence. One of the things that you have to ask is the jury seems to be so out on when AGI is actually going to happen. You know, last year we had people, even just recently, the godfather of AI was here in Dublin, Geoffrey Hinton, really painting quite an apocalyptic future of AI. But it's the immediate, it is, for me, working with AI every day, it's at the moment the biggest threat are actually people. It's not AI, it's people. Our AI is only as good as the data on which it's trained. And exactly like Umesh said, there's absolutely huge practical and financial and big considerations that need to be made now. And that's not getting enough attention because we all kind of, well, I'm a former journalist. The way I became the CEO of an AI company was I worked as an executive TV producer. So my whole skill was language. And then I trained to become a psychotherapist. So we've married my language skills with the psychotherapy, and we trained AI to basically perform that way. So as a journalist, I'm very familiar with the if it bleeds, it leads scenario. And we all go towards that kind of apocalyptic sci-fi, but we're missing the most important thing. How is it going to change big business, education, society, jobs in the next 3 years? That's what we're talking about. It's coming that fast. As you said, this month alone between Hugging Face, Meta and OpenAI, and what's going to happen next month?
As somebody who runs a 8,000-person company focused on creative services, I have some worries in that space. But to look at this through the practical lens, and we have a question as well that we'll get to in a moment. There's a lot of enthusiasm now at the enterprise level. Everybody wants to get into the game. You have to have a roadmap, otherwise you're not taken seriously during your board meetings or your earnings calls. I sometimes feel there's a little bit of a magic button perception, where people think it's out of the box, ready to go, and it solves a million things. Let's get to some of the practicalities. What does a roadmap look like to get to some of this sort of impact and progress?
Well, that's a great point. I see the world kind of in two different time frames. A lot of folks think AI occurred after GPT. Not true. You know, the first instance of AI was about 70 years ago, very close to here in the United Kingdom with Alan Turing, putting out the Turing test in the 1950s. That's how long this has been in existence. And every single enterprise, several of you here in the audience, you've been using AI way before GPT came about. But the difference was prior to GPT, AI was consumed in SaaS applications. HR applications, CRM applications, contact center applications. AI was wrapped around it. There were machine learning models powering some SaaS applications. And the buyer of these was line of business, CRO, CMO, chief customer officer, et cetera. Post-GPT, the major shift that has occurred is that AI is now an infrastructure topic, which is in the CIO's domain. And it's very easy to understand why, because boards are looking at the CIO and saying, look, you're responsible for both our roadmap, but at the same time, keeping us compliant with the ever-changing regulatory environment with AI, and that's going to be truly important. And so for the CIO, this is now an impossible way to manage the company if every new SaaS application brings its own machine learning algorithm. It's impossible to put guardrails. And so a lot of shift is occurring in building these large language models or small language models and fine-tuning them within the enterprise, on the enterprise's data. As one of my customers, a CIO of a very large telecom company, put it, he calls it the idiot savant strategy. That he wants each of these models to be very narrow, but very deep in one functional task of the company. So take a telecom company. Each one of us are telecom customers. When was the last time we opened the telecom bill? Never, because it's unreadable. It makes no sense. And so we want to develop a billing savant, a small language model that goes really deep in the billing example, such that any one of us consumers, if you have a question about billing, that model answers the question. And by the way, that's all the model will do. All right? Now we think about customer experience, a different model. We think about sales, a different model. Networking operation. So the roadmap is beginning to shift from, first, where is the data? If you're an enterprise, get your data in your data lakes very quickly, because that's going to be the asset that's going to be used to train these models. Then the data needs to be prepared. So there's the whole area of knowledge retrieval, or in technical terms, RAG, where you're beginning to apply AI now to data to clean up the data and make it ready for AI consumption. Then comes these generative AI models, large language models, small language models, open source, proprietary. That's getting commoditized, but those models will get fine-tuned within the enterprise. And finally, the top layer of the cake is the applications. Customer experience applications, emotion applications, sales applications, and so on and so forth. And this roadmap now is well understood, but now it requires practitioners with experience, people who know the pitfalls, because the time it takes from writing this down on paper to actually showing a 20% efficiency gain and therefore appeasing the CFO, that's not a straight line. And very few companies or people in the world have actually done that with experience.
Yeah. To an extent, it reminds me a bit of digital transformation. The failure percentage of long-term digital transformation projects was, I think, at 70%. Right?
Yes,
so
that's right.
Execution is key.
Execution is key, absolutely.
Marie, we have a few questions here, and we have a slightly clickbaity title. Is it bigger than the internet? Question, how could it ever be bigger than the internet if you need the internet to use the increasingly large models in the concentrated and increasingly concentrated industry?
I mean, it depends on your definition of bigger, I suppose, in many ways. Look, the internet is the connectivity that links all of this together. None of this would exist without the internet. The internet is like the transport structure that is bringing this incredibly powerful technology to all of us. But what AI has done, and this is what we have done certainly with Emotionise, is the same way the internet basically democratized information. It democratized information. Information is now available on our phones, you know. AI is actually going to democratize some extraordinary skills. So within Emotionise, we have democratized emotional intelligence. Only 36% of us are emotionally intelligent. Whenever I say that figure, everybody looks around and goes, oh my God.
Only one of us three,
so
statistically.
64% of us don't necessarily display strong emotional intelligence skills. And what we have done in Emotionise is we have democratized that. This is an essential power skill that's now available to everybody within generative AI. So that's only one application of what AI can do. It's about to democratize extraordinary intelligence skills. And that's the exponential element of the growth here. So that's the difference.
And I would add to that, we use the term democratize a lot, but we also have to get ready for a moment where a lot of historical services and skills get commoditized, right? And I think if you look at the last decade, we've talked about software as a service endlessly. I think more and more services are going to be software, right? The services that we used to, as companies, fill with manual labor are really just going to be an interface. And I think that's when we talk about bigger than the internet. I think the speed of that change and the impact in such a short time frame is going to be surprisingly difficult to sort of manage through. We have a question about that. Would a comparison of AI impact to how the internet changed business operations where perhaps be in order to create some perspective? Any take on that?
I think, look, let's quantify this and let's get, once again, real about this. There's a McKinsey report that talks about in the next 5 years, over $20 trillion of economic impact will be created because of Gen AI. And that would mean a $5 trillion shift of budget from traditional spending, which is labor and SaaS applications, towards AI. What's behind this McKinsey report? Why do they say that? Back in the internet, in the late 90s, early 2000s, companies were struggling to become .com versions of themselves. And anyone who failed to do that shift is not alive today. Those businesses are not around today. And so that .com shift was a big part. It was almost a parallel identity. The AI shift is not like that. It's about bringing AI within the operations of the company. We are at the cusp of beginning to see a single-person unicorn company getting born because of AI. You don't need developers, you don't need finance people, you don't need lawyers, you don't need HR people, because these generative AI applications are capable of doing that. We are beginning to see some examples like that, and we are very close to having that economic value. And so if I think about the 2 or 3 major transitions that have occurred right before AI happened, that was the internet. But also don't forget, we saw the cloud and mobile. That was yet another big transition that we saw. I think AI is going to be bigger than all of those put together in real economic terms and at a pace that none of us in this room have ever experienced. Humankind has not seen a pace of evolution as fast as AI. And I think AGI, I'm in the camp that we are closer than we think. Because these models are getting so smart, they're learning all the time, the GPUs are becoming more and more available. And ultimately, I'm in the camp of, let's embrace it. Let's not be fearful. What ultimately AGI stands for me is an age of abundance, where publicly traded companies will report 30 to 40% more free cash flow because of AGI. They'll be able to report less OpEx spending or fixed cost spending because of AGI. All of us in this room will have shorter work weeks because of AGI, where AGI would be helping us become more efficient in our jobs. And I think we haven't seen an impact of that kind in any of the prior tech transitions.
So we have a few minutes to go. I want to quick fire some of these questions, and I think a really practical one. There's no name here, but a teen in this room or somebody that has a teen at home. What types of career would you recommend a teen to go into in the AI era?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's a really good question. I have 2 teenagers myself, actually, and my son is actually training to be a carpenter at the moment. And I find this debate really interesting because, this is what Umesh is saying, this transformation that it's about to have in society. So a carpenter is a trade that has been around for millennia. I mean, Jesus was a carpenter, yet my son's trade is probably safer than somebody who's actually studying accountancy at the moment. Now, that is a major shift in our world, in our universe. And what I would say is, there's a lot of talk about disruption, and it's coming. It's already here. I mean, you and I spoke even in terms of content creators, graphic designers. You're looking at, you were mentioning, Wesley, 40% drop in terms of freelance work, that's only in a year. So what I would say is, if you have teens at home, the most important thing, exactly as you said, run at this problem. Do not run away from this. It's not a problem, but run at this issue. Run at it. And if you understand how to use AI, you will definitely be ahead of your peers.
Quick fire question. Do you expect one commercial company to dominate or continue to dominate AI over the next number of years? Or will everybody have their own personal, local, or open source private agent? And that, to me, such a fundamental conversation to have, right? Are we going to look into an ecosystem, or are you going to have a private agent for e-commerce, for personal mental health, for cooking, for? Where do we think this is headed?
Well, this is where I look back at the past 2 trends, and history taught us 2 lessons. First, every time a new major tech transition occurs, first, the infrastructure players are the ones that get benefited the most. When the internet occurred, it was Cisco, networking, Oracle and others with databases whose stock prices first jumped to the roof. In 2000, the world's most valuable company was not Apple, it was Cisco. And then when the infrastructure is set up, the value creation shifts to the application layer. Then came Salesforce.com, then came Facebook, then came ServiceNow, and today those are some of the biggest enterprises in the world. Similarly, right now, we are seeing exactly the same playbook repeat itself. The first wave of value creation is infrastructure. NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, etc. But as this infrastructure gets set up, and by the way, these LLMs and all of that, I consider them as part of the infrastructure. We should let corporate capital, not venture capital, invest in setting up this infrastructure. So it's a great thing that the hyperscalers or Meta or some other open source companies are setting up the infrastructure. Right behind this, the value creation starts to occur back in the application layer. Companies like Maurice or myself or several of you in the audience, that's how historically this has been taught. But I think to the specific question of is it going to be one major player dominating or there could be more, it almost doesn't matter, folks. What really matters is the companies that learn how to embrace AI with agility and show real business outcome impact. Whether those models are vanilla large language models or pre-trained SLMs focused on your business, I think that layer will get commoditized. Yeah. Not to say that will not have value, but it won't be the most important layer, because everyone will have access to an LLM or SLM if they don't already, but it's the application and the use cases that will make all the difference.
So we're almost done. Marie, I'm going to hark back to your previous career as a journalist. I think this is quite a good question in that sense. How do you think society can or should deal with the job losses created over the next 3 to 5 years as a result of AI?
With the, sorry,
The job losses in the next 3 to 5 years.
I think it's a debate we're not having. I think we need to be very realistic about it. I just mentioned the drop in content creators. I think this is a paradigm shift. For the first time ever, technology and humanity are actually evolving together. This has never happened before. I don't think we're speaking enough about it. I think we're a little bit like this, and that AI is going to be great. There will be disruption. I mean, Umesh literally outlined 2 stacks of that pyramid effectively are gone. And I don't think we're having enough of a genuine philosophical and existential debate about what's down the line and what is our purpose and what do we now fill as our purpose if AGI has taken over a lot of these roles.
And on that happy note, I think we are done. There's quite a few more questions that have this type of slant. We can discuss them with a pint of Guinness later on. Thank you to Marie. Thank you to Umesh. Amazing.